What are groups, frames, and section, and what are the differences between these three options that we have in Figma, which we can use in order to combine multiple layers with each other? In this video, I'm going to answer this question and I'm going to explain everything that you need to know about frames, groups, and sections. And at the end, we will do the deep dive into the auto layout feature, and I'm going to explain every functionalities that it has. So get sure to watch this video until the end. And if you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment for me. Now, without further ado, let's get started. My name is Kia, and here's a Kimo. Welcome back to my channel. As I said in the intro of this video, we use frames, groups, and sections in order to combine multiple layers with each other. For example, here in my design file, I have one text layer and one vector shape and one image layer. Of course, I have three copies of all these layers in order to show you the different ways that we can combine them. However, in the layer list, you can see that how it is already so crowded, and you can see how messy it's going to get if we kind of add more element to our design. The first way that we can combine these layers is using the groups. To group some layers, we can select the layers that we would like to kind of combine, and then right click on them and use this option here, group selection. We can also use the combination key Ctrl-G. Same goes for the frame. We can select all the layers that we would like to combine together, and this time, instead of group them, we can right click on them and use this option in the menu, frame selection, or use the combination key Ctrl-Alt-G this time. For the section, we can pick up the section tool using the combination key Shift-S, or here from the toolbar, we can select on this item and open the drop-down menu, and we can find the section tool here. Then we just need to click on our canvas and drag our cursor around the element that we would like to combine to each other. Now you can see how we made this section. If we take a look in the layer list, you can see that in all these three approaches, we basically made one parent layer, and then we nested the layers that we had as a child layer within that parent layer. For example, here for the section, you can see the same structure that we have in the frame and the same structure that we have in the groups. Now let's get back to the main question that we had. What are the differences between groups, sections, and frames? In order to find the proper answer for this question, we need to get familiar with the concept of resizing behavior of the child layers within one parent layer. Just imagine if we have one singular individual layer, like here in this case, I have one image. If I want to do the resizing on this layer, I can just grab the corner of this image and just do the resizing as I wish. Also for the position, I can drag and drop this image wherever I would like to have in my canvas. However, when we combine multiple layers with each other, we basically create one parent layer and nest multiple layers as the child layers within that parent layer. And we create basically one relationship between these child layers with themselves and with the parent layer. For example, here in the group, you see that we have some child layers and we have one parent layer. And if I start to resize the parent layer, we will see that how it will impact the child layers. So there is some relationship. And the difference between the frame and group and section is basically in the ways that we can define these relationships. In groups, we do not have so many options to create and define complex relationships between the child layers and their parent layer, and of course between the child layers themselves. So we do only have fixed relationship that we define at the beginning before we combine these layers together. For example, here, if I select the group number 1 as a parent layer and I start to shrink it, you can see how the child layers are going to maintain the relationship. But we do not have control on this relationship at all. This is a fixed relationship. However, in the frames, we have another story. We have multiple options and properties which will help us to define more complex relationship between the child layers and their parent layers. For example, in this case, if I select the frame number 1 and start to shrink it, you can see how differently the child layers are going to behave. And the reason is that we have one properties in the properties panel that will help us to define this relationship. So for example, if I select the text layer, you can see here in the properties panel that we have this constraint section. In this section, we can define that what exactly should happen if the parent layer start to resize. So as you can see here in this visualization, and of course in this properties, which is basically defining the horizontal behavior and the vertical behavior, we defined that we would like to pin the text layer to the left and top border of the parent layer. You can see, of course, with this blue highlight border. We can change this, of course. For example, if I select the image, we have the same relationship between the child layer and their parent. So I'm going to change this, for example, for image to the right and maybe to the center. This means now if I start to resize the frame as a parent layer, the image is going to stick to the right border of the frame. So basically we change the relationship between the image and its own parent layer, which is the frame number 1. We can of course do the same thing for the vector shape that we have. We can select this one, and here from the constraint panel, we can align it to the center, for example. We can pin this shape to the center of the parent layer. And now if we start to resize the frame number 1, which is again the parent layer, you can see how differently the vector shape is going to behave. So this was basically the main difference between the groups and frames. In frames, we have the constraints, which will kind of give us this possibility to have more control on the relationship between the child layers and their parent layer, which we do not have it in the group. However, there is another feature that we have in a frame, which you know about it, auto layout, which will give us more control even on this relationship, which we do not have it at all in the group. I'm going to cover all the information about the auto layout soon, but before that, let's talk about the section. Okay, sections are not very important, I would say, at least for this video. There's not much to say about them. We just use the section in order to organize our design file. Of course, visually in the canvas, design canvas that we have, and in the layer list, which will help us to kind of increase the findability of our assets and design elements. Let's get back to the auto layout feature. Auto layout is basically a feature that will give us some properties that we can use them in order to have more control on the relationship between the child layers and the parent layer. And how we can apply auto layout. First of all, we need to know that we can apply auto layout only on frame and not on group or shape or vectors. For example, if I select the frame number 1, here in the properties panel, we have this section which says the auto layout. And if I click on the plus button here, we will basically apply auto layout on this frame. However, there is also one combination key, Shift A, which will automatically apply auto layout. We can also use this combination key on groups and shapes, which will help us to automatically create one frame and apply auto layout on it and add the group and layers that we had there as a child layer to that parent layer. For example, here, if I select this group and apply auto layout on it using the combination key Shift A, you can see how we convert the group to frame first and then apply the auto layout on it. We can do this, of course, on the individual layers as well, as I said before. For example, here in this case, I would have one image layer which is separated from all other groups. And if I apply the auto layout on this using the combination key Shift A, you can see how we automatically make one frame and add the image as a child layer to it and apply the auto layout on it. Okay, now let's get familiar with the properties that we have in the auto layout section. The first thing that we need to learn about it is the layout type. We can have horizontal and vertical orientation for the child layers within this parent layer, which is the frame number 1. So here in this auto layout section, you can see that we have this layout type properties. We can change it to vertical or horizontal. You can see how it impacts the positioning of the child layers within the frame number 1. Also, we have another option, which is the wrap. This basically means that the parent layer frame number 1 is going to wrap the child layers within itself. So if we start to resize the frame number 1 to bigger size, you can see that it's not having any impact. However, if we start to make it smaller, and whenever there is no enough space in the parent layer in the horizontal axis, then it will push the child layer to the next row. So basically, this is how we can wrap the content within one parent layer. The next property that we have in the auto layout section is the gap, the distance between the child layers in this parent layer. You can see these properties here. And if you start to increase it, you can see how the distance between the child layers are going to increase. And if you reduce it, you will kind of reduce this space. Also, you can do it visually here by grabbing this pink and purple handle and increase or reduce the gap between the child layers. Next properties are about the horizontal and vertical padding which is basically the space between the border of the parent layer and their content or the child layers inside them. So here you can find these properties. This one is the horizontal padding. If I increase it, you can see how the space between the border of the parent layer and the content within it is going to get increased. Of course, for the vertical one also we have the padding. We also can change the padding individually for top, bottom, left, and right by just clicking on this individual padding icon here. And at the end, we have the alignment, which will help us to kind of have a control of the alignment and the positioning of the child layers within the parent layer. In order to understand this better, I'm gonna increase the size of the parent layer here, in this case, frame number 1. And you can find these properties here in this visualization that we have. So right now we have left top alignment. I can change it to the center, and you can see how we position all our child elements in the center of the parent layer. We can, of course, choose another alignment, in this case for our child layers. There is another extra properties in the advanced setting related to the auto layout that is better to get familiar with. You can find it here by clicking on this 3-dot menu, advanced auto layout setting. And here in this menu, you have this properties canvas stacking. This property will let you to define the order of the child layers in the parent layer. Let's see what does that exactly mean. Right now, the initial and default value for it is the last on top. This means if we give a negative value to the gap properties, you can see how the elements, the child layers, are going to overlap each other. And you can see how the order between these child layers are. For example, the text layer is the last one, like it stands in the back and behind of all the layers. And then we have this vector shape which stands in the between this text and image layer, and image stand on top of all the other layers. Of course, if we select the frame number 1 again, and here from the advanced setting, change the canvas stacking to first on top, you can see how we change the order. So now the image is behind all the other layers. So these were all the features that we have inside the auto layout properties panel. However, there is another property that will help us to create more complex relationship in terms of resizing behavior between the child layers and the parent layer, which you can find it here in the frame section of the properties panel. If you see here, we have one horizontal resizing and vertical resizing behavior. And of course, we can set this behavior and these properties for both parent and of course the child layer. So basically this relationship is going to have two sides. So for example, in this case, when I'm selecting the frame number 1 as a parent layer, you can see that both horizontal and vertical resizing behavior are in the fixed value. This means that no matter what happened to their child or the parent layer, nothing is going to have impact on the size of the frame number 1. So it's fixed. We just give a specific value and that's it. However, we can now make a relationship between this content and the size of the child layers and the parent layer by changing the value of these properties to hug the content. Now you can see how the frame is hugging the content and it gets resized based on the size of the child layers. To understand this better, now if we start to resize, for example, this image as a child layer, you can see the size of the frame is also getting increased, which means now we have the relationship and we have this connection established. Same works if we start to add more gap, of course, or reduce the gap. The frame number 1 from now on horizontally going to follow the size of their child or the behavior of their child layers. We can do the same thing for the vertical axis. For example, if I set the vertical resizing behavior properties on hug the content, you can see now we have the same logic in the vertical axis as well. Okay, now let's select one of the child layers. If we do so, for example, right now I select the image, we can see that we have the same horizontal and vertical resizing behavior in the section as well. However, when we open this one, we can see that we do not have the hug the content, which is normal because the child layers that we selected has no child layer within itself. But we have this new value which says fill the container. This means basically, if you select, for example, for the horizontal resizing behavior, fill the container for this image, you can see that this image horizontally going to follow its parent and fill all the gap and empty space that would appear when we start to resize the parent layer. We can do, for example, the same thing for a vector shape that we have and set the horizontal resizing behavior to fill the container. You can see now these two layers are going to follow the size of their parent layer. We can do, of course, these things for the vertical axis as well by just setting the vertical resizing behavior of the child layer and fill the container. Now, if we start to resize the parent layer in the vertical axis, you can see that the image is going to follow its parent. That was it. We basically now know everything about the frames, groups, and sections, and of course the auto layout and its features and properties. Let's now work on one real kind of use case that see if we can kind of use all our learnings in practice or not. So first of all, I want to make one very simple user interface element. One teaser including image, headline text, and CTA button. So first I'm going to start by collecting all the elements that I would need. For example, I need one image, so I'm going to use the Unsplash plugin to just import one image. And then I need one text layer for the headline that we would like to have in this teaser. As you see, the measurement, for example, the font size is very huge. I can just reduce it to something more realistic, like 20 pixel. And then I need to resize, of course, the image as well. And then we need to have one CTA. So let me just add the CTA text as well. We can, of course, work on the styling of the CTA text. I'm going to set the font size on 16 and maybe the font style on medium or bold. Okay, the first element that I would like to work on is the CTA. I would like to have a background color behind the CTA text. And of course, I would like to have some padding around the text. So I guess we can use frame here. So I'm going to use the combination key Shift A to create one frame and apply auto layout automatically on it. So we have now frame number 2. I can change it, of course, to CTA just in order to have better organization in our design file. Here I can define the paddings. For example, for horizontal padding, I'm going to set it on the 16 pixel or maybe 24 pixel. And then for vertical padding, I'm going to set it on the 8 pixel. And here in the fill section, I'm going to add a background color to my CTA. I'm going to pick something dark or maybe pure black. And at the end, I'm going to add some corner radius to have more rounded, let's say CTA in this case. Now we can use frame and auto layout in order to kind of define the relationship between the CTA and the headline text that we have. So I'm going to select this 2 and use the combination key Shift A to combine them and apply the auto layout on it. I'm going to rename the frame number 2 to maybe content section. And right now I can define also the gap between the text and the CTA. I'm going to set it on maybe 16 pixel. The other thing I would like to define right now is the horizontal and vertical resizing behavior of the child layers here. So I'm going to select the headline. And as you can see right now, the horizontal resizing behavior has been set as a default on hug. I'm going to change it to the fill container. I'm going to keep the vertical resizing behavior on hug. In this case, if the text length kind of increase, you can see how it will maintain its relationship with the CTA, and in general, nothing is going to be broken. I'm going to select the content layer and the image that we had and use the combination key Shift A again. And here in this case, I can define the gap between the image and the headline or the content section. So I'm going to set it maybe on 24. And then it's time to work on the resizing behavior of the child layers. Here I have this content layer that I can set the horizontal resizing behavior on fill, that it will, in this case, follow the parent layer horizontally. And for the vertical, I will still set it in hug. And for the image, I'm going to set the same thing. So I'm going to set the horizontal resizing behavior on fill the container. Of course, now it looks a little bit broken, but I can grab the whole frame 2 and start to increase it, and everything will look better now. I can also, of course, resize the image in the vertical axis a little bit. And I'm going to rename the frame number 2 to teaser. This is going to basically be our final component and element. Of course, there is something else to do. We need to select the teaser the parent layer and also apply a background color to it. I'm going to select the text and change the color to something darker. We have some problem with the margin around the headline and CTA. They are really touching the border of the parent layer, which is a teaser. So I'm going to select the content layer and then add some horizontal and vertical padding. In this case, maybe 8, and 8 works well. I just don't want to have the top margin here above the headline, because we already have the gap between the image and the headline itself. So it's going to be a little bit more than what is needed there. So I'm gonna select this individual padding option and then make the top padding 0. And at the end, I'm gonna add just corner radius to whole teaser, maybe something around 10 pixel. However, you can see that we have this corner radius right now in the bottom side of the teaser. However, on top, we do not have it. So we have to select the frame teaser. And here we check on this option, which is saying that clip the content. This means anything outside the frame is not going to be visible anymore. Okay, let's go one step further. I'm going to duplicate this teaser and I'm gonna make 3 copies of it here in my canvas. I'm gonna select all these teasers that we have in our design file and apply autolight on it using the combination key Shift A. Now we have full control on the gapping between these teasers. For example, I can set it on 24 pixel. I'm gonna select all the teasers, and here in the frame section, I'm gonna set the horizontal resizing on fill the container. In this case, if you start to resize frame number 2, which is the whole teaser section, you can see that the teasers are going to follow the parent layer. Now I would like to apply another auto layout on frame number 2, and in this case I'm gonna add the horizontal padding and top padding. I'm gonna add the background color here, so I'm gonna select the teasers that we made and apply the shadow on it, and then we are done. We basically made a teaser section very quickly, very easily. For those who watched this video until now, I would like to also introduce another feature, another functionality that will help you to have even more control on the frames that you have and the positioning and the relationship between the child layers and the parent layer. And it's about the scrolling behavior. I'm gonna make one frame in this shape that we can have enough vertical scrolling. And then I'm gonna add one teaser that we made to this frame. I will just make some copy of this and just put it around the frame just in order to have a better scrolling effect. Now I'm going to run the preview, and then we will see that if you start to scroll in the frame number 4, the parent layer, everything is very normal. So basically the scrolling happen in the way that we expected. If we select one of the child layers and go to the prototype, you can see that we have this scroll behavior section, and we have one properties which says position. Here we can define how should be the behavior of the child layers when we start to scroll inside the parent layer. For example, right now the initial value is scroll with the parent, and this is what's happening here. So when we start to scroll, the child layers are going to also get scrolled. However, I can set this value on fixed. In this case, if you start to scroll in the parent layer, you can see that it has no impact on the child layer because it has a fixed positioning. We can also set this property on sticky on top. This means whenever we scroll the parent layer, the child layer also will get scrolled until it arrives and reach to the top of the parent layer. And from that moment, it will stick to the top. We also have some properties that will help us to define the relationship of the parent layer with the child layers in terms of scrolling behavior. So if we select the parent layer here, we have this overflow in this scroll behavior section. Right now it's on the no scrolling, but what does this exactly mean? This means if we, for example, have a frame which the content within that, the child layers kind of position outside the frame. For example, right now I resize the frame. You can see that now we have other teasers below here in this section. Right now we don't see it, but if I go to the design panel and turn off the clip content, you can see that we have still some child layers here. And let's get back to the prototype panel, and here in the overflow section, we have the no scroll. This means if we go to the preview, we cannot scroll. However, we have still some layers and contents there. We can change this, of course, right now. For example, I'm gonna set it on the vertical. This means if we get back to the preview and we start to scroll, we can see the other layers. So we can really do the scrolling in our frame. This feature is very helpful when we want to make a horizontal scrolling. Let me just quickly make one example here. I'm gonna position all the frames that we had here. And of course, I'm gonna select the frame number 4 and set it on horizontal scrolling. And here you can see that we have horizontal scrolling behavior for these teasers. Okay, that was all the information that I found very helpful for myself personally when I'm designing layouts and in general user interface. So I thought maybe it would be helpful for you. I hope you learned something new in this video. And if it was so, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share your opinion and thoughts in the comment section with me. Let's learn together and see you in the next video.